Now, U.S. Secretary of State just announced the resumption of the negotiations between Israelis and Palestinians, and I'm sure that those of you who follow the Israeli press probably noticed that this announcement was not greeted by a great deal of enthusiasm. And the reason is not because the Israelis don't care about peace. The reason is because the Israelis are now convinced, beyond any reasonable doubt, that the root cause for the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians is not necessarily territory. The Palestinians worked very hard to convince us that it's not about land. Until 12 years ago, to be more accurate, 13 years ago, until the summer of the year 2000, the leading political concept in Israel was one advocating territorial compromise. Yitzhak Rabin was elected on territorial compromise. Netanyahu was elected in '96 because he said he supported Oslo. Ehud Barak was elected on territorial compromise. And the belief was that if you look at the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians, and you try to identify the makeup of the DNA of that conflict, what is it about? Then the belief was that at the very core, there is a deal. There is a bargain. You give them what they want, namely land. They give you what you want, namely peace and security. Well, Ehud Barak went to Camp David in 2000. And he did just that. He put the territorial compromise to the test. He accepted President Clinton's very generous offer to the Palestinians. He said yes. I don't have to tell you, you know the history. The Palestinians said no, and shortly thereafter waged war against Israeli civilians, war that Na'amat Israel, Na'amat USA, and Na'amat all over the world had a lot to do with healing the wounds of Israeli society following that war. But that wasn't it. In 2005, in August of 2005, the most unlikely person to do so, Israel's Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, is practically fulfilling the Palestinian territorial fantasy. He's handing over the entire Gaza Strip to the Palestinians. He's demolishing all the settlements. He's uprooting thousands of Israelis, taking them back home. And what do the Palestinians do with this golden opportunity to turn Gaza into an oasis? They turn it into a launching pad to attack Israel time and again. Thousands of rockets and missiles were shelled onto Israel since the summer of 2005. And if this was not enough, in 2008, reportedly, I say reportedly because it's unclear exactly what happened there. The only account that we have is Condoleezza Rice's memoirs. Reportedly, Israel's Prime Minister Ehud Olmert is offering the Palestinian leader 100% of all the territory. And yet, Abu Mazen says no. So you take the string of events that I just described to you, beginning the failure of Camp David, the aftermath of the withdrawal from Gaza, and the failure of the Olmert-Abu Mazen talks. In all three instances, there's one thing that they all have in common. The Palestinians declined to accept a territorial deal. Now, of course, this is not an indication that the fact the Israeli public doesn't care about peace. We care passionately about peace. We believe in democracy. We believe that a more democratic Middle East, by definition, is a safer Middle East for Israel. But at the same time, we understand that it takes two to tango. And we do not cultivate high hopes, and I say it with great sadness, because we know who's on the other side. Leadership that time and again failed to make the right decisions for their people. So this is the first thing that is happening. We cannot look at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict as if nothing is happening around us. There is enough evidence to describe the process that we're looking at in two ways. It's the disintegration of the Middle East, on the one hand, and on the other hand, the rise of political Islam, which you see all over the place. The second thing that is happening, which is of huge importance, unfortunately, hardly even discussed in the Jewish world here in the United States. You know that one of the world's greatest problems that we're all discussing, from the United Nations to any other international organization, is the question of poverty and water scarcity. Water, throughout history, has been a reason for peoples to go to war. Peoples and tribes and clans and bands used to fight and kill each other over water throughout history. When the first Zionists came to that piece of land, Palestine, the first Aliyot, water was a major issue, and still is. But believe it or not, a strategic decision made by all of Israel's governments created the unbelievable situation that today, 2013, Israel is marking its 65th year of existence, we reached the point of water self-sufficiency. We are now able to produce all the water that we need for agriculture, for consumption, for drinking. In fact, very soon we will be in a position to export water to the world. Now this is a miracle. This is a miracle of historical proportions. If you know the land, if you know that 65% of Israel's soil is arid land. If you know that this is one of the biggest issues for us over the years, you can understand and appreciate the magnitude of this historical achievement. Which leads me to the third dramatic development. Huge importance, again, historical. In the Mediterranean, as well as in other parts of the land, the Golan Heights and the Elah Valley, scientists were able to discover huge deposits of natural gas and oil and shale oils. Again, I will not bore you with the technical details, but in the near future, Israel will reach the point of self-sufficiency in the area of energy as well. And this is not going to take too long, hopefully. We believe that between 5 to 10 years, you will see a different kind of Israeli economy. An economy that is able to export natural gas to the world rather than purchase natural gas and be dependent on our neighbors like Egypt and others. And lastly, the fourth major event or process that is happening today in Israel, which will also lead me to the conclusion of my remarks. There is a sociologist here in the United States. His name is Richard Florida. He's now teaching at New York University. He coined the term the creative class. What does it mean, the creative class? Florida claims that in every society no matter which society, Brazil, Israel, Greece, the United States, there are about 3 to 5% of the society that are the creative people. He calls them the creative class. Now, what makes them unique is the fact that these are the people that come up with ideas that change the world. In every society. Now, those ideas do not have to necessarily come from the field of technology or medical breakthroughs. Those ideas can come from other areas. Let me give you an example. A fitting example because it's about a woman. About 6 months ago, I was given the privilege and the opportunity to host in New York the world's most unique, most amazing, and most unique theater group. There's nothing like it in the whole world. This theater group is from Israel. It was founded by a woman whose name is Natal. She's originally from Switzerland. Now, what did she do? She grouped 12 people that are both deaf and blind, and she turned them into one of the most successful theater groups in the whole country. Think about it. You're deaf, you're blind, and now you're on stage. Right? And you have to perform. Think about the isolation. You can't hear a thing, you cannot see a thing. Forget the question of how did you even learn your part. But how would you know when is your time to go? When is your cue? You're on stage. Well, she developed, again, creatively, a special language where the actors and the actresses on stage, using some help, are touching one another. That's how they communicate. That's why the theater's group's name in Hebrew is Na Lagat. In English, please touch, or please do touch. And I have to tell you, one of the most moving things I ever dealt with in my job, to host them in New York, to see the New York Times Review, the New Yorker, Time Out magazine. They became stars. So creativity is not limited only to high tech, or medicine, or science. Creativity is the DNA of Israeli society. And if according to Richard Florida, in every society 3 to 5% are the producers of ideas that change the world, then I can tell you for sure that in Israel, the creative class is perhaps the fastest growing creative class in the whole world. Today, Israel is the #1 producer of conceptual products that are based on ideas.